Hey guys, it's Luke on Sean's channel. I'm so fucking excited for this build because this is the first Sky Striker build post the June 2023 ban list. Engage is at 2, multi-role is unlimited. I'm so excited for this. This is a pure Sky Striker build. This is definitely the best Sky Striker build I've ever made. I never had the privilege of playing this when it was full power during TOS format. So this is my best Sky Striker build. I hope you enjoy it. This is fucking great. Let's get straight into it. First, let's give a little acknowledgement to the Sky Striker token. Very nice to have this in the deck. It's easy to get now because of Magnificent Mavens, but if you don't have it, don't worry, we don't need it. We're going to start strong with the monsters. Of course, we have to run 3 copies of Raye. If you're watching this video, I presume you have a fairly basic understanding of the Sky Striker monsters and everything that they do. But I'll still just go over for all the kind of new players coming along. This isn't really a budget build, so if you're a new player, maybe you don't want to be spending too much on it. But we have all other videos of older profiles on the channel that maybe you guys might prefer. They're more budget friendly than this one right here. But anyways, without further ado, 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Raye. Raye is the best starter of the deck. She has 2 effects. So her first effect being that it's a quick effect. You contribute this card special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. This is very good for her Linkage OTK, and also it's good because since the likes of Impermanence to target the monster, what Raye can do is just quick effect, switch herself out with one of her extra deck Sky Striker monsters, so she's good for not being targeted. Then the secondary effect, probably the most important, probably the main reason why people have a lot of frustration facing this deck, is that Raye also has a graveyard effect. So that if a face-up Sky Striker Link monster you control destroy a battle or leaves the field because of opponent's card effect, you can special summon this card from the graveyard. So of course this is just a very good way to have kind of like recycling. As you know, Raye is the best starter, and the fact that she's able to kind of like revive herself when there's some removal on one of the other Sky Striker Link monsters, I find running Raye at 3 is definitely essential for this build. We have 1 copy of Roze. You only need 1 copy. The main reason why you want Roze is because she's the light attribute Sky Striker monster that you need in your graveyard to get the full effect off of Linkage. But Roze is still pretty good regardless, because she has an effect from hand that if a Sky Striker Ace monster is normal or special summoned, except for Sky Striker Ace Roze, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then she also has a graveyard effect, not nearly as good as Raye's, because where Raye brings herself back if a Sky Striker monster is destroyed by battle or opponent's card effect, you can bring her out. But Roze is if your opponent's monster in the extra monster zone destroy a battle or leaves the field because of your card effect, you can bring her back out. Which honestly you never really use. Roze you kind of want in the graveyard, get the full effect off of Linkage, and Roze is also like a good starter overall, because if you don't have Raye, you could normal summon Roze and use her for the links instead. But still, running 1 copy of Roze definitely essential for the deck. I wouldn't run any more than 1. 1 is definitely the right ratio for this build. Now we're not fucking around getting budget friendly. We run 1 copy of Therion Regulus. Regulus I fucking love for this build because what it basically is, you can bring him out by equipping him with one of your machine monsters in the graveyard, which, as you know, all the Sky Striker Link monsters are machines. So you can easily bring Regulus out, then equip it with one of your Sky Striker Link monsters. And what Regulus does is that it has a quick effect, is that you can target 1 Therion monster that's on your field or in your hand. You can send it to the graveyard to negate an effect that your opponent activates. Well, negate a card or effect that your opponent activates. So it's just a very good omni-negate, the fact that it's a quick effect as well. And since most of the time we have this like face up on the field, this is the Therion monster that you send to graveyard to negate the effect. So of course when he's on the field, none of your Sky Striker spells can activate because you have no monsters in the main monster zone. But the reason why this has good synergy with the deck is because this tributes itself from the field to the graveyard to negate a card effect, and then that opens like whatever back row you have with your Sky Striker spells. So definitely running Therion Regulus at 1. This deck can still manage without him. I know this is a bit of a pricey card, but if you're looking for a more budget friendly alternative, maybe Pank might be a little bit better. for your style of play, but if we're making this deck to its full potential, I'd definitely run Therion King Regulus at 1. Of course, now we're going on to just hand traps now to round off the monster. 3 copy of Ash Blossoms because it's very universal. Hand trap, you can definitely use it to your advantage no matter what you're going up against. Because this format, I still see it as a combo heavy format with super heavy samurai and whatever. I think Droll might be very effective to run at 3 in the build as well. Also run 2 copies of Effect Veiler just because Effect Veiler is a very good monster negate during your opponent's turn, but also we need a light spellcaster monster in our build to get our Selene combo. So Effect Veiler at 2 in main. And then I also run 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, mostly because this is very good against the likes of Super Heavy Samurai, and Ghost Ogre is just a very good hand trap overall. So I definitely run Ghost Ogre at 2. Those are the ratios we have for the hand traps in the deck, and that rounds off the monsters. Now we're going into our spells. I'm so excited to say that Engage is now semi-limited. We can run 2 copies of Engage. Engage is the searcher of this deck. So almost every Sky Striker spell card has 2 effects, the primary effect and then also a secondary effect depending on the condition. Most of the conditions being that you need to have 3 or more spells in the graveyard. What makes Engage so great is that it's the searcher for any Sky Striker card, and then if you have 3 more spells in the graveyard on activation of Engage, then you get to draw an extra card. Engage can search Engage, but that's fine because we really don't care. We can recycle it off of Kagari as well. But just having Engage at 2 really boosts up this deck to make it really, really fucking good. And I'm so happy that it's finally getting back into the game. Definitely essential to run 2 copies of Engage. We run 3 copies of Widow Anchor. Widow Anchor is really good. It's a quick effect spell. If you control no monster in your main monster zone, target 1 face-up effect monster on the field, negate that face-up monster's effect at the end of this turn, and then if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can take control of that monster until the end phase. Good interruption and good way to steal one of your opponent's starters, so definitely run a Widow Anchor at 3 in this build. Newest bit of Sky Striker support we got is Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage. Linkage is fucking amazing. It's just another easy way to get a start in the deck, going with into your Sky Striker Link monsters. So with Linkage, it reads as follows. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn after this card resolves, except Sky Striker Ace monsters. And then you also send 1 other card you control to the graveyard. And if you do, special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone, and if you have at least 1 light and 1 dark Sky Striker Ace monster on your field and or in the graveyard, the summoned monster gains 1000 attack. So that light Sky Striker monster we talked about earlier is Roze, and then the dark one of course is Raye. So it's good to have them both into the graveyard when Linkage resolves. Because it just gets our Sky Striker Link monster an additional 1000 attack, which brings them up to a minimum of 2500 attacks, which I find to be very, very good. There's a Linkage OTK. There's a line where you can OTK with a 2-card combo using Linkage and Raye. I probably do that in another video. I showed it in the Nexus, Sky Striker Nexus video we made a while back, so if you want to check it out there as well, you can. But definitely run Linkage at 3. It's definitely essential for this build. Now, fresh off the limited list, we run 2 copies of Multirole. Yeah, it is unlimited now, but I still find that to play this deck most optimally, just run it at 2. 2 is absolutely fine. Multirole is crazy because once per turn you can target 1 other card you control, send that card to the graveyard, and then also your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to your spell card activations for the rest of this turn. So if you use Multirole and then send another card to the graveyard, you can't get ashed, you can't really get interrupted when you're using your spell cards. So Multirole is really good for that primary effect. But since it's a continuous spell and has a lot of text, of course, there's a secondary effect in there as well. Is that once per turn during the end phase, you can set Sky Striker spells with different names from your graveyard up to the number of Sky Striker spell cards you activated this turn while this card was face up on the field, but banish them when they leave the field. Now this is crazy, I'll tell you why. There's a few, the way Multirole is worded, there's a few kind of like cool things we have in this deck that make Multirole really fucking broken. One being the effect of Shizuku. So Shizuku also has an effect during the end phase that if this card was special summoned this turn, you can add one Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand with a different name from cards in your graveyard. So if you have Shizuku as Chainlink 1 and then Multirole as Chainlink 2, what you can actually do is, if you had an Engage in graveyard, since Multirole is Chainlink 2, you can set that Engage and then Shizuku will resolve, so you can search your other Engage. And that can work with all the other Sky Striker spells as well. So if you have a Widow Anchor or Linkage in graveyard and you still want to search another one off Shizuku, just use Multirole as Chainlink 2 to set that one card first and then use Shizuku as well. Also, a little side deck option, which we'll go more in detail with later, is I also run Imperial Iron Wall in this build in the side deck. That says neither player can banish cards. Now, Multirole has the effect that says after you set those cards, then you have to banish them when they leave the field. But because Imperial Iron Wall says neither player can banish cards, what you can do is just use Multirole, reset all of your cards, and if you have Imperial Iron Wall, when you activate those Sky Striker spells again, they don't get banished. They go to the graveyard because neither player can banish cards. So that's just another reason why I think Multirole is definitely very good to run more than 1 in this deck. I think 2 is fine, is optimal enough. Well, you can run at more if you want, but I definitely think running at least 2 is great. Also, Multirole, since it targets another card and sends it to the graveyard, it has great synergy with Area 0, because when Area 0 is sent to the graveyard, you can actually special summon either Raye or Roze for your main deck. So there's loads of reasons why you need to run Multirole at more than just 1. I think 2 is optimal, but of course, all decks are up for interpretation, so it's pretty much down to player preference. 1 copy of Ego Booster. Ego Booster is great protection for pretty much any of your monsters. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, target 1 face-up monster in the field. The target is unaffected by card effects this turn except for its own. And also has the effect that if you have 3 more spells in your graveyard, it cannot be destroyed in battle this turn either. And since it's a quick play spell, it's great to set it and then activate it during your opponent's turn, or just having it as an extra bit of protection during your turn is also very great. 1 copy of Afterburners. We run a lot of monster removal in this deck. You'll see all of the rest of them in a bit, but Afterburners is just another Sky Striker spell that if you control no monster in the main monster zone, target 1 face-up monster in the field, destroy it, then you have 3 more spells in the graveyard, destroy 1 spell or trap in the field. We don't have a whole lot of spell/trap card removal, so this kind of works as a little bit of spell trap card removal if we really need it, but we don't run jamming waves. I just don't find it good enough. But definitely run Afterburners at 1, primarily for that effect. The final limited Sky Striker card is Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones, if you control no monster main monster zone, special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace token in defense position. And then if you have 3 more spells in the graveyard, when this resolves, the tokens attack and defense become 1500 instead. It's just another starter basically. If you don't have Raye or Roze in your opening hand, or Linkage, Hornet Drone is just another way to bring out a token to go into your link plays. Of course, I already mentioned Area 0. Area 0 is good solely for the effect that if it's sent to the graveyard, you can get Raye or Roze from your main deck and special summon it out. But also has a primary effect as well. When it's face up on the field, you can target 1 other card you control, excavate the top 3 cards from your deck, and if you do, add 1 excavate Sky Striker card to your hand, then shuffle the rest into the deck. But it isn't the only field spell we run. We also run 1 copy of Therion Discolosseum. We're kind of stepping away from all the Sky Striker spells in the deck now. You've seen them all now, so here's all the other little spells that we run. Therion Discolosseum is a very good field spell because when it's activated, you can add 1 Therion monster from your deck to your hand, which of course you're going to get your King Regulus to your hand with this. And it also has a secondary effect that once per turn, if your monster will be destroyed by battle, you can send 1 Therion card or 1 Endless Engine aggro system from your deck to the graveyard instead, which really doesn't come up too often, unless if this Colosseum gets Ash and then you still have Regulus in your graveyard. But then also once per turn, when a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to, also has the effect that once per turn, when a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Therion monster from your graveyard and add it to your hand. So this is a good way to kind of like recycle or Regulus, because it sends itself to the graveyard for the Omni Negate. So you're probably going to see in the graveyard a lot, and the fact that Therion Discolosseum is able to recycle it, that we can get it back to our hand easy enough, I find it very good to run in this deck. And because we run 2 field spells, I run 1 copy of Terraforming, just because it's good kind of like for baiting out Ash and stuff like that, and also because we can want different field spells depending on the situation. Terraforming is good because it gets an extra spell in the grave, and also it can search us what we want depending on how we want to approach the game state. So definitely run those 2 field spells and Terraforming at 1 each. Now you want to see some monster removal, 3 copies of Raigeki. I fucking love saying that now. Raigeki, just destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Fucking amazing removal. And also the fact it's not once per turn, and you can activate as many times as you want, depending how many copies you have, of course. It's a good way to get spells in the graveyard, and good board wipe as well. And more spells in the graveyard mean we get the full effect of our Sky Striker spells. So definitely run Raigeki at 3 in the main deck. They can be sided out depending on what you're playing against, but definitely 3 in the main I find to be very good. 1 copy of Call by the Grave. Of course, this is more leaning towards a combo deck than a control deck. So Call by the Grave, just so we can stop the interruptions coming our way, is definitely essential to run this deck. The only spell/trap removal we have really, apart from the secondary effect of Afterburners, run Harpie's Fire Duster at 1 in the build. And finally, rounding off the spells, we have Reinforcement of the Army, just to search our starter, which is Raye. Or Roze, depending on the situation, but you're most likely going to be searching Raye. That does it for the spells. Now we're going to move on to the traps. We only have 3, and of course it is the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Impermanence is the best trap ever printed, I feel. Well, that's probably not true. But Infinite Impermanence is still probably the best legal trap we have right now. It just target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, negates effects and end this turn. Then this card was set before activation and is on the field at resolution for the rest of this turn. All other spell trap effects in that column are negated, and if you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. Infinite Impermanence, definitely run at 3 in the main. Now since that rounds off the main deck, we're good to go onto the extra deck now. We run 3 copies of Kagari. Kagari is great. If this card is special summon, target 1 Sky Striker spell in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So it's good for recycling and engage, and also Kagari gains 100 attack for each spell in the graveyard. So you can, we run about 22 spells in the main deck, I think it is, so we can get Kagari up to a ridiculous amount of attack, especially when she's brought up even further by Linkage as well. So Kagari is definitely essential to run at 3. Shizuku, run it at 3. Shizuku is great because monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack defense for each spell in the graveyard. It's kind of like the opposite of Kagari. And also Shizuku, if she was special summoned this turn during the end phase, you can add 1 Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand whose name isn't in the graveyard. And I already told you the situation that you can use with Shizuku and Multirole. So as you know, Shizuku is definitely very good for this deck, definitely run at 3. I'm at a constant back and forth with myself saying to run Hayate at 2 or 3, but I think 2 is definitely most optimal. Hayate is the Sky Striker link monster that can attack your opponent directly. And then after damage calculation, if this card battled, you can dump 1 Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard. That's an essential thing to know for your Linkage OTK. So definitely run Hayate at least 2. If you want to run 3, yeah, 100% go for 3. Especially if you're on a budget. But I run it at 2 for this build because I feel it's most optimal. 1 copy of Kana. Kana mostly comes in as a bit of filler, most just because it's good to have another machine in graveyard to bring out your Regulus. But also as an effect, when Kana is brought out, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. It cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. Which is good because if your opponent has like a big bulky monster and you don't want it attacking, killing you next turn, bringing out Kana can just really disrupt it from attacking and getting your opponent to swing for game. So Kana is very good, and of course she has more than just that purpose in the deck. So definitely run it at 1. She also has another effect which kind of rarely comes up, but for every Sky Striker spell that resolves while Kana is on the field, you gain 100 life points. So if you want to win for time, yeah, fucking do that bullshit and you win for time with Kana. So that's pretty funny too, I guess. 1 copy of Zeke. We're getting another Sky Striker link too very soon, but we don't have it in the TCG right now, so definitely running Zeke at 1 is very good. Bring him out, you need 2 monsters, including a Sky Striker Ace monster. When his card is link summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, banish it until your opponent's next end phase, and at once per turn, you can target 1 other card you control. This card gains 1000 attack, then send that target card to the graveyard. So it's kind of good for getting Zeke up to a lot more attack if you want to try and swing for game. But most likely Zeke comes up because when we use Widow Anchor to take control of one of your opponent's monsters and you have a Sky Striker up, you can just link them both and then your opponent can't really get that monster back. Because it's a summon condition, you're basically just removing one of your opponent's monsters. So Zeke at 1 is definitely very good for the build. We run 2 of the best Charmers. We run Dark and Lina. You probably already know what these guys do. What they need is, depending on the attribute, they need 2 monsters, including either a dark monster or a light monster, depending on who you're going into, which you have no problem because you have both Roze and Raye to go into these guys. But this is very good because it is a spellcaster monster, so it's good for your it's good use for when you're doing your Selene play, which we'll go in a second. But also they have the secondary effect that Dark can target 1 dark monster your opponent's graveyard, Lina can control 1 light monster your opponent's graveyard, and then special summon to a link zone that these guys point to. So it's really good at stealing your opponent's monsters a lot of the time. I've used this countless times just to annoyingly take monsters from my opponent's graveyard. I know that they can like revive themselves. So it's good for kind of stealing some of your opponent's resources as well. I'll definitely run 1 of each of these guys in this build, and I think you guys should definitely do it too. As foreshadow, we have Selene. Selene is very good for getting her Accesscode Talker link climbing thing. Selene is the reason why we run Effect Veiler in the main deck. So Selene, if its card is link summoned, place spell counters on its card equal to the number of spells on the field and in the graveyards, which you get it up to a lot. And then once per turn during the main phase, you can quick effect remove 3 spell counters from your field, special summon 1 spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position to a card that is, to a zone this card points to. So of course it has to be Effect Failure, since it's in defense position. It can't be a link monster, which is good to get your Effect Failure out to one of these zones, which will then make you link climb into your Accesscode Talker. Accesscode Talker is fucking insane. All you need is 2+ effect monsters to go into this link for. And when he's brought out, most likely he's brought out with Selene. It could be brought out other ways with this deck, but most of the time it's brought out with Selene. And when Accesscode Talker is brought out, you can target 1 link monster used for the link summon this card, and then he gains 1000 attack for the link rating. So if he's brought out with Selene, he gains 3000 attack, bringing him up to 5300. And then Accesscode Talker also has the effect that you can banish link monster from your field or graveyard and destroy that many cards your opponent controls, and that effect can't really be interrupted as well. So Accesscode Talker and Selene is definitely a good mini combo to have in this deck. Final extra deck monster, this isn't too essential anymore considering Cash got hit, but I still find that Cash would be a very good deck in this format coming up anyways. So 1 copy of Divine Arsenal AA-ZEUS. The only way you get into this is when you're stealing Xyz monsters from your opponent, so that would be with Widow Anchor or whatever, and then you can just get that Xyz monster to attack, and then you can just overlay for Zeus. Zeus is a great big bodied guy, 3000 attack and defense, and also it has an effect that's not once per chain, where you can detach 2 materials and just wipe the field of everything except for Zeus. So definitely run Zeus at 1 in this build. I find it to be very, very good. And since that does it for the extra deck, we're going to finish things off with the side deck. This is a very, very strange side deck, but this was the ratios I find to be most optimal. That it just has, it is very unconventional, but I think this is the most optimal way to play. We run 1 copy of Surgical Striker Hamp. This is the Sky Striker Kaiju. You can only bring him out if you have a Sky Striker Link monster in the extra monster zone, but it's also a good kaiju because it can get rid of one of your opponent's monsters, or if you have another monster on your field, you can also attribute it for Hamp, so that's very good to get another big body onto your board. And in terms of other kaijus, I also run Gamma Seal. It's just the weakest kaiju, so if your opponent has like a monster that's really hard to out, it's good just to have a kaiju in the side deck, just because you never know. It's definitely gonna help you in the long run. So those are the two Kaijus we run this side. We run 2 copies of DD Crow. It's just that because Engage is at 2, I feel like a lot of people are going to try and play Sky Strikers now. So I want to have a way to get rid of the Rays in the graveyard. That's kind of like the main way to disrupt Sky Strikers. I didn't want to run Bestios. I think Bestios are too hefty a cost because they bring themselves out into your main monster zone, which kind of locks you out of your Sky Striker spells. So DD Crow I find to be the better variant compared to Bestios. And also, you know, I know we talked about this isn't really a budget build, but hey, DD Crow is more budget than Bestios. So I definitely would run it at 2 sooner than I would run any of the Bestio monsters. So 2 DD Crows on the side. Branded is still a thing, so I think 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More is pretty good, especially because Branded can so easily bring out Dragoon. And since Dark Ruler No More is spell speed 4, I mean, it's good to kind of just negate the effects of all your opponent's face-up monsters. So that's great, so we don't get interrupted when we're kind of going heavy into our combo, and Dragoon or whatever the problematic monsters on your opponent's side of the field are, they can't really do anything when they're under Dark Ruler No More. So definitely running a 3 in the side I find to be very, very good. And also it's another spell for to have in the graveyard to get the full benefit of your Sky Striker spells. 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. 2 copies I find to be the most optimal. We have the 1 Harpies in the main anyways, so just 2 Cosmic Cyclone on the sides, very good for back row decks. We run 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched is great. Even if you don't have it in your opening hand, it's a good, when you're doing your going second in like game 2 or 3. Evenly Matched is still very, very good because we don't build a massive board with Sky Strikers. So Evenly Matched is great to sort of make your opponent banish cards face down, which can really fuck them up depending on if they make a big board and you just don't have too much on your field. So Evenly Matched I find to be a very good side deck option. It's fantastic when you're going second, so definitely run it at 3. But be very careful when you're siding because it conflicts with the other trap we run in this side deck, which is Imperial Iron Wall. I already told you how crazy this card would be when it's kind of like has good synergy with Multirole. But most likely when you're using Imperial Iron Wall, it's when you know you're going first, so you wouldn't really have it in the deck at the same time as Evenly Matched anyways. But Imperial Iron Wall is just great because neither player can banish cards, meaning that when Imperial Iron Wall is up, you don't even fear Bestios coming down, banishing your Raye, because neither player can banish cards. Also, Imperial Iron Wall is great because it kind of fucks up the likes of Runic Naturia as well. So I definitely run Imperial Iron Wall at 3 in this build. I was kind of hemming and hawing between Imperial Iron Wall and Nibiru, but I find that more often than not, I kind of end up breaking with Nibiru. My opponent is purposely building their board around it. So Imperial Iron Wall I find to be a better alternative than Nibiru. But of course, this deck is always open for interpretation, so build it however you want. This is just the way I build that I find to be most optimal. Now that wraps up the deck, guys. Please let me know what you think. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts. I've been a fan of Sky Strikers for ages now. This is definitely one of my favorite decks, if not my favorite deck of all time. And the fact that we're just getting back to full power potential is great. It's fantastic to see Engage come to 2 and unlimited multi-roll. I'm really happy with the way this deck turned out. Definitely in the near future you're going to see some live duels with this. I might do some combo videos and we'll talk about ways to improve the deck or change it around depending on what way you like to play. But that about does it for now anyways. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel. Please like and subscribe and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.